Hi, everybody. Hopping on a little bit early just to make sure everything is working because I have a new computer and a new mic. Well, it's the same mic, but it's hooked up to a new computer. But hi, guys. Happy Ostara, blessed Equinox. Oh my goodness, Persephone's back. I hope everyone's been doing well. It's always so awkward in the beginning, waiting for everyone to show up. Like, what do I do? Do I just hang out? Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited about my hair. Next time, though, I think I'm going to get it like lighter and put more pink in it. I just didn't want to go too pink right away. Oh, it's great to see everyone again, too. Oh my God, it's been so long, hasn't it? It's been a really long time, I feel like. How are you all doing? We need to catch up. I have a lot to talk about in terms of what's going on, but I definitely want to make live streams part of my routine again because I miss hanging out with everybody. Hi, everybody. Oh, it's so nice to see everybody again. Oh, that's fantastic, Sharon. Oh my goodness. I hope everything went well with your ritual. It is different. It's hard to see in this light. I need to invest in a ring light or something, but yeah. It's a lot lighter. It's got some pink in it. Oh, hello, my friend, Jinsol. Oh my goodness. So happy you're here. Oh, the familiar faces. Oh, I missed you guys. But it's two. We'll let everybody. I don't know how many people are gonna be here, but I don't really care. It's been a while. As you can see, things look a little different, not just my hair. Oh, Rose. Okay. Sharon is Rose. Okay, perfect. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Sunday. I love Sundays. They've become like my day because it's Apollo's day. Okay. I don't know how many people are gonna be joining in, so my relationship with Aphrodite is good. She kind of pops in and out. She's not one of the main deities that I've been working with. Right now, the main ones are the twins, Apollo and Artemis. And strangely, here's the twist, Eris. Can you believe it? Eris, of all gods. I was never expecting her to show up in my life, but she did. She's wonderful. I adore her. I never want her to leave. So yeah, that's been happening. Oh yes, it's very important to clean, especially when Apollo is nagging you about it. I understand, Jinzo. We don't want to upset Apollo. Moo, did you come to join? This is one of the reasons, by the way, I'm doing the live stream in my bedroom is because you're very likely to get a Moo Kitty sighting. You come say hi. Everybody missed you. But yeah, so I've been mostly the twins and Eris. But Hermes pops in every so often. So does Aphrodite. I feel like eventually Athena's gonna show up because she already kind of like threatened me a little bit. Not like threatened me, but she was just kind of like, just wait, we have work to do. And I'm like, oh no. Moo. Moo! Oh my goodness. She's rubbing up against the computer. Moo. Say hi. Say hello. What is Rose's Demeter like nags you and tells you to get stuff done? Because that's always Apollo for me. Apollo's always like, you need to do this. Actually, it was Apollo who suggest I do live streams again, because I really want to get the channel up and running. I really miss doing Tea with the Gods and all of that, and I miss talking with everybody. And Apollo was like, you have this habit of doing too much, like trying to do too much at once. Because I have so many ideas of things that I want to do, and instead of just focusing on one thing and just building on that, I'm like, okay, I like get so wrapped up in trying to do everything that I get overwhelmed and then I don't do anything. And that's kind of partly what happened with my being away from the channel. Oh my God. Moo! She's such a scutch right now. And it was Apollo who was like, who, pointed out that I do this, where I just like freeze up and not do everything that, oh my God. You are never like this, and now you are. And he was like, why don't you start with live streams? Because they're easy to do and you love doing them, and everybody else, really enjoys them too. So just start there. And then you can slowly build on that, because I'll probably feel very motivated to do the podcast again, because we'll be having our chats and discussions, and I'll be like, oh, I want to talk about that in a podcast, or, so it kind of worked out, especially when I got the idea. Well, he gave me the idea. I know I can't take credit. He gave me the idea, and it was the spring equinox. And like, what better way to, breathe new life into the channel than on the first day of spring? It's all about new beginnings, fresh starts, new growth, new life. It just kind of worked out and seemed like the right thing to do. So yeah, that was all Apollo. Yay! Oh my God! Thank you. You guys are so wonderful. Oh my God, really, Jinsoul? Apollo apparently loves live streams. Oh, it made me really happy that like hearing everyone saying, oh, like getting really excited and saying I missed the live streams, because I have this really bad habit, and I think a lot of you can relate to it, of just kind of like downplaying yourself and the things that you do and think, well, nobody really cares, or nobody is that into it, or because it's something you did, you're like, So I have that habit of, which I'm working on, not being like that anymore. So I have that habit. So it's nice when people actually are like, no, we missed it. We really like it. And you guys are here hanging out with me. So it's nice. So thank you. Oh, that's Anna. This is your first time? Oh, I actually haven't hung out with Persephone, but it was really funny because after I announced this live stream, and I kept referring to Persephone, that Persephone is bringing the live stream along with her when she is bringing spring and the flowers and everything. She's also bringing my channel and the live stream with her. And then I work at a library now. That's another big change that happened in my life is I have a full-time job at the library, processing the books, and a book came on my desk like the day after I made the post, and it was called Persephone Station. And I saw it and I was like, hi Persephone. Like I feel like she kind of like popped in just to say like, kind of like wish me luck with everything and just kind of like let me know that she's still around. A lot of the gods I've noticed that even if I don't feel them and they're not super present in my life, they're always still there. Like they kind of, I feel like they always just kind of like peek in every once in a while just to kind of let me know that they're there and just kind of check up on me and everything. That's at least how I feel about it. Because they feel they're like family. It's kind of like certain family members or even friends who you may not talk to all the time, but every once in a while, you may text them or they text you, like just checking in to see how everything's going and everything. And you chat for a little bit and then you go about your life again, That's kind of how I feel about the gods. I know. They just, especially now that I work at the library, I see them everywhere in the title of books, especially Apollo. Oh my god. I've always believed, Apollo has great influence on humanity, but being at the library and seeing all the different places his name pops up, like not even it has nothing to do with Greek mythology or ancient Greece. It's like there's a book about COVID and it's called Apollo's Arrows. So because he's the god of plague, so they're kind of making that kind of association, but there he is showing up on that. Anything that has to do a lot of space stuff, because of the Apollo missions, there's Apollo in great big letters. He's everywhere. There's this other book, I think it's a fiction book, and it's called like I think the Apollo Murders or something like that, and I'm like, he's everywhere. And I'm just like, it really kind of solidified for me how just really significant Apollo is to humanity and like this interesting relationship that we have with him and he has with us. Yeah. Oh, I love Aries. Aries is wonderful. Yeah, I feel like Aphrodite has always been one that even throughout my relationship with her, she like sometimes won't be around, but it's like I know she's still there. She's very like, I don't know, she's one that I feel like just is just always going to be like once you make a connection with her, she's always going to be around whether you realize it or not. I'm actually going to create a space in my bedroom on top of my dresser specifically for her, even though like I don't work primarily with her anymore. I still want space for her because she's really important to me and the things that she represents is really important to me. So I'm like I like have the pieces all there. I just haven't had the chance to like, cause I have to hang things up and put things together, but I have like this whole thing. I'll post pictures once it's done, but I'm like really excited about it. But she's getting her own space in my bedroom because it just feels right, right? Aphrodite in the bedroom, that just feels right. Oh, hi, Melanie. Oh my god, I didn't even know they're doing the Artemis space travel missions. That's great. Go Artemis. She's getting recognition. Yes. Dag's here. Hi. Hi, everybody joining. Oh my goodness, this is so nice to see everyone again. It does feel right. Moo, you are being so scoochie pants right now. Yes, it is 100% okay not to worship all of the gods. Like first off, it's impossible. There's too many. There's far, Far too many. Even the Olympians. That's a lot. 12, 13 if we're going to actually put all of, we're not going to. You need to stop. Lay down. If we're going to also not exclude either Dionysus or Hestia, that's still a lot. And the thing is actually the ancient Greeks didn't worship every single deity in the pantheon. They had their specific ones depending on their family, depending on their city state. There were ones that were specifically significant to them and their lives. And that's what they did. So that's kind of how I believe that we as modern worshipers should do it too. You have your own, my goodness, moo. Have our own team that you work with that are significant to you. You need to stop rubbing up against the laptop. I'm gonna kick you out soon. Yeah, you have your team that you work with and that are just very important to you. So, and that could be whatever works for you. For some people, they have their job. For me, I work at a library, so Apollo is my patron deity. I was already working with Apollo, but now he's even more significant because he rules over my career. So he helps me with that. But a lot of it is just the things that are important to you, whether it's your role in your family, in your life, whether it's things that you're working on, your hobbies, your goals and ambitions, who you connect with, that's really what it is. So you don't have to, you can, if you want to have one candle for everyone and just be I'm lighting this candle for my entire pantheon, you can absolutely do that. But it's also okay to focus primarily on just a small group or even just one deity, Again, it's whatever works for you. She does. I have been using my computer to Skype with my friends. I do online therapy, and she doesn't do this. And now as I'm doing a live stream, she can't stop rubbing her face against the computer. So I think that's her saying she missed you all. Tea with the Moo Kitty. Yeah, it really is. Yes, the podcast is definitely coming back. It is 100% coming back. I have so many ideas. Doing the live stream is actually my way of kind of building back up to getting back to the podcast. So it absolutely is going to be coming back. I have so many ideas for it. I think I just needed that space because I think I needed to, there's a lot of reasons, considering this last year was hectic for me. Between my apartment got completely redone, as you can kind of see a little bit. I have my purple walls now, but my apartment got completely redone. So I had to pack everything up, put it in storage. I had to move downstairs with my dad and my brother and deal with all that. And then I got my job at the library right around when that was all happening. So I had to adjust to, because I never had a full-time 9 to 5 Monday through Friday kind of job before. I'd worked in retail all of my 20s. So, and I worked part-time. So I never, I had to get myself adjusted to that. So now I kind of feel a little bit more I guess adjusted, kind of. But I just miss it. Basically, I've kind of realized I missed it and I need it in my life. I need this space to have community and talk to you guys about the gods and be able to share my thoughts on the podcast. And I kind of have more of a idea of what exactly the podcast will be, because I think I felt like I had to do it a certain way. And maybe some of you can relate to this a little bit in the Hellenic polytheism community. I feel like specifically and this is not a bad thing necessarily, but I feel like it's very focused on doing worship in a very specific way and sharing content in a very specific way, where it's like it feels like school, basically. Just to wrap it up, like, it felt like school. I was researching, then I had to take all of my research, put it in like an essay, or technically it was a podcast, and then present it. Which, I mean, that's how you do content, but I think it was more of like it felt like I had to do things specifically, like, I got this from this book. This is how the ancient Greeks did it. Very focused on just giving information about what the ancient Greeks did, instead of going a little bit further and talking about being a modern worshiper and working with deities in a more modern way and thinking about things in a different way, which is really, I feel like, what my platform is more about, where I do bring in, actual relevant information from the past. I have a degree in history, so that serves me well. I know how to research. I know how to take that and put it towards like my thesis, what I'm trying to prove and talk about. I can do that. But I did that in school already. I kind of want to take it a step further of like, okay, well, how do I turn this into relevant in the modern world? Or what are other things, like, what can modern worshipers do with the gods? Like, how can we look at them through a modern lens? Like, I think for me, that's more what I'm interested in, and that's kind of what I want my content to be more about. I don't want it to be just strictly me being like, they did this in ancient Greece, and they did that, and they did, like, I don't want to be so focused on just reiterating information that I found in textbooks, basically. But using that stuff as like a basis and a foundation to build upon a more modern take, if that makes sense. Yes, exactly, Jinsol. Break the mold of tradition. That's exactly how I feel. And just make it, because my end goal with this entire platform, what I want is to make Hellenic polytheism, and not even just Hellenic polytheism, but deity worship as a concept, more accessible to people, and just kind of show the benefits of it. How working with deities can really help you, because I know a lot of people are more focused on like, well, you shouldn't you should just worship the gods to worship them, which is fine. But there should be some benefit for you, right? There should be, because in my experience, the gods want to help you. The gods like helping humanity. They feel like their own calling to do that. And so it's kind of like my content is geared towards helping people. I kind of always liked calling myself almost like a relationship counselor or something, like helping deities and worshipers connect with each other so that they can have a real fulfilling, wonderful relationship. Like, that's kind of how I see myself on here, is just really helping to make those connections. So yeah, that's kind of, I think I needed that space away to really think about what I want Tea with the Gods to be going forward. And I figured it out. Having that space, I kind of figured out like my voice, because that's how it needs to be. Like, if you're going to put content out there, it should be your content, your voice, your experiences, instead of you just kind of going with what everyone else is doing. It's whatever you connect with. And then other people who need it will find it. And if it's not for certain people, it's not for certain people. Yeah, exactly. They don't, yeah, people, I feel like with the Hellenic polytheism community specifically, because the topic of ancient Greece, like looking at Greece in itself has always been a bit about like it's the elite, that studied that stuff, who did classics and everything. So, and I almost feel like that's bleeding into the community because and I believe I'm kind of guilty a little bit of this too. Like we kind of all would be like research, 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 but it's not accessible. It's not accessible to everybody. It was easy to me again because I have a history degree. So I'm used to reading texts like that. A lot of people aren't, and and some people have other, they're neurodivergent, and they have disabilities. So it's like reading that kind of stuff is really difficult and time consuming, and it could be a big struggle, and I think it can also like make you feel defeated, like almost like you're not welcome in this space. If you can't read this stuff, then it's like, well, then obviously you're not welcome here, and I don't want to contribute to that kind of feeling, because it's also for some people it's not, people just don't relate to that because we're not, none of us are ancient Greek, so it's like it's good to know the past. And one of the reasons I've realized that doesn't get talked about enough when we talk about how people should research, because everyone always says you should research because you don't want to do something wrong, or you don't want to offend the gods, or you don't want to mess up, and that's usually the why people say you should research. But I've come to realize that one of the other reasons people should research is to protect yourself, because there is a whole host of people who are manipulating history, or who are just flat out lying, and who are trying to sell their way of doing things as the one way to do it. Like, think about all the people who are saying, like, let's talk about Artemis, because I've been talking a lot about Artemis on Tumblr. If you don't follow me on Tumblr, then you don't know this. But if you follow me on Tumblr, you might have noticed I'm talking about Artemis all the time, because there's a lot of BS about Artemis out there, and I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about it. But the one you hear all the time is that Artemis hates men. People push that narrative so hard that Artemis hates men, and you cannot be a man and worship Artemis. If you research Artemis and look at the way that she was worshipped in ancient Greece, you would know for a fact that that's complete bullshit, because Artemis was worshipped by male worshippers, and she even had male priests. So you kind of can detect the bullshit when you know the past. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that's a aspect of research that doesn't get talked enough about, is that it helps you protect yourself from other people's crap. Because a lot of the times, people just want a figurehead for their hate. People do it all the time with Aphrodite. It's mostly the goddesses that unfortunately get it. Artemis, Athena, Aphrodite, those. And then you have also the whole thing where no god, you can't worship any goddess with Aphrodite. Which again, if you know how the ancient Greeks looked at everything in the past, you know that that's BS, because they didn't. Even though they told these stories about the gods having their feuds and everything, that didn't that didn't bleed into the actual religion. And they didn't go, well, you know, Persephone and Aphrodite fought over a boy once, so you got to keep them away from each other. That wasn't a thing, you know? So I felt like I just had a lot of points in that one conversation. Okay, let's see. It does. You're right, Melanie. It does have more records. I do also just think it is because it always that even when you go to when you go to school for classics, they have that very elitism elite they very much have that kind of like snobby, well, I know classics, I study ancient Greek, it's very there's just it's kind of always been that way because that's what it was back in the day. It was like if you were among the elite, you studied the classics, you know? So it's kind of also just related to that. It just ancient Greece just always had that, like, if you know it, it's supposed to say something about your status. So I kind of think nowadays there's this idea that the more you know and can kind of like list off a bunch of like sources and things and information, like the more valuable you are to the community. At least that's what I think. And you know, if you have a different experience, that's cool. But from what I've seen from my side of it, I feel like the people that really get uplifted the most in the community are the ones that are putting a lot of, and that's not bad. I think it's important that um we do talk about resources and we cite our stuff and we talk about what happened in the past because again there's so much BS out there that we need actual historical relevance and historical accuracy to combat it. So I do think that's important and those people are doing great work. That's not knocking them, but the problem is like I've often gotten shit on because I don't do that. I'm not the one that's sitting there like writing these long ass posts that are akin to essays you would write in school. You know, that's not my vibe. Like I said, I did it already. I did it all throughout my school career was just essays. Like when you get a history degree, you all you do is write essays. That is it. That is it. No more multiple choice once you get into college. I was missing multiple choice because all my tests were essays. It was just essay constantly. So for me, I just like I don't want to do that anymore. Like I just don't. And that's just not and it's also just doesn't interest me. You know, just kind of saying like this is what the ancient Greeks did is not my it's not my cup of tea. And again, there's plenty of other people who do it and do it well and do it better than I ever could. And again, not knocking them because we need that, but not every content creator within this community needs to be doing that. You know, I think it's good to have people who are looking at it in a different light and who are giving the community different content basically. You know, that's also me putting a little bit of my vulnerability out there on the table because that's kind of one of the reasons I vanished for a little bit was because I definitely felt like cuz that wasn't me. And I also have a lot of my own shadow around the academics, you know, the academia world and where I fit into it and knowledge and expertise. There's a lot of that in my shadow. And so for me, I was doing a lot of toxic comparison and feeling like I was supposed to be like those people, but I knew I couldn't. because it's just, again, it didn't interest me, but also like I don't have the energy for it. I really don't. Bless those people who do. I don't know how they do, but they do. And wonderful for them that they have it, and wonderful for us that they share it with us, but it's just not, I don't have the energy for it. And again, it doesn't interest me. I like to be a little bit more like, okay, I'll learn things about ancient Greece and then I like try to attach it to the modern world, you know? Like, for example, this was funny. I've been reading about Delphi and the Pythia, and something that was in the book I was reading cracked me up because it said that a lot of the times what the oracles, because I think this wasn't even just about Delphi, this was about all the different oracles. A lot of them were getting asked to validate, or to confirm, that's a better word, to confirm that the god that the person thought visited them was the actual god who visited them, because like the ancient Greeks believed that the gods can visit you in your dreams, or who were giving certain signs, you know. So it was them basically going up to them saying, I think, was it Zeus that gave me this dream, or was it Zeus that gave me this sign? And the oracle would say, you know, either yes or no. And I was laughing because I was like, isn't that what I basically do on Tumblr all the time? I'm like, are humans any different? Because here, like, literally, I get questions all the time going, oh, I had this dream and I think it's from Hades. Do you think it's from Hades? I'm like, oh my God. Not to say I'm not saying I'm an oracle. Just to be clear, I just think it's funny that it's like, we have this thought of like needing that confirmation from somebody, you know, who you think would have the answer. And I just was laughing. I was just like, I do that. Like, that's literally what I do all the time on Tumblr. It's just confirm whether certain gods are sending certain, you know, certain signs to people. But see, that's what I do. When I read certain things, I like to kind of bring it into the modern world and connect it to the modern world. Or sometimes it's not even about looking at what the ancient Greeks did, but focusing more on just my own experiences and not caring whether it has any basis in the past. Because that's the other thing. It's like some people think like everything that you say needs to have, you know, be connected to the past in some way. And it doesn't, because it's a different world now. You know, why would the gods, I think it's kind of, wouldn't be fit for the gods to do everything the same way they did in ancient Greece, because they're not dealing with the same people anymore, right? They're going to have to kind of do things differently. At least that's how I think about it. Yeah, humans have not changed. That is the one thing I have learned the most reading about ancient history, especially the Greeks. We have not changed, because the same things that they fought about back then, we're fighting about today. Like the whole, like, whether a god, like perfect example, I always use this example, is the Athenians like scoffed at the idea of a war Aphrodite, but Sparta's like, the war Aphrodite is the best Aphrodite, you know, like, yeah, they're all about war Aphrodite. But it's like we do the same thing here, where it's like, that's not Apollo, and it's like, no, but that's my experience with Apollo, but like, no, that's not Apollo, because I don't experience Apollo that way. We do it, it's the same thing, you know, it's the same thing that the Athenians and Spartans were doing all the time, where they're like, no, I don't know that kind of, like, that version of that god. And it's like, well, that's the version that we worship, so I don't know what you're doing. Or it was like the whole thing, I think they fought about when Apollo's birthday was, because the Athenians celebrated, because they have different calendars. So the Athenians celebrated it on one day and the Spartans celebrated it on another day. And they were like looking at each other like, you don't know when Apollo's birthday is? What kind of worshiper are you? You know, it's the same things that we do today. It's so funny. Bye, Rose. Thanks for hanging out. It was wonderful seeing you. I think my stomach's growling. My goodness. Well, Rose is gone, but they asked, how do you cope with the misogyny of ancient Greece? The thing is, it's like that, I don't know, with ancient Greece specifically, it doesn't, I'm going to say it doesn't bother me, because sometimes I do get it frustrated, but I think it's because it's not about the gods. I mean, yes, they show the gods in mythology they like are misogynistic in the mythology, but I don't know, if you followed me for a long time, you know how I feel about mythology and taking it literally. But I don't know, I guess because misogyny's still alive and well today, that it's just sort of like, of course, you know, it's like not surprising. You just kind of get used to it, and you just know that that's what you're dealing with, you know? I think, again, especially having, you know, studied history as I have, misogyny, like, history is misogynistic. So I don't know. I guess it's kind of sad to say I'm kind of like desensitized to it. I just am, you know? But I think that's one of the reasons I approach worship the way that I do, where I don't do everything the way the ancient Greeks did, because I'm like, why am I gonna follow what a bunch of misogynistic people did? You know, like, why would I follow a worship that is built on misogyny? So yeah, that's kind of, it's just, I don't know. I think you just kind of have to go into it knowing that that's just how it is. You can't change it because it happened, you know, so you just kind of have to accept it, I guess, even though that kind of sounds really like to say. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, that's another idea too, is that not everything is not all resources are available in all different languages. That's a very good point. But definitely something I want to do is, I've wanted to do this like my whole life as someone who loves history, is try to make history more accessible. So I do think, while my primarily kind of reiterating history isn't the basis of my platform, I do definitely want to incorporate that in places, because that's a bit of my own little passion project, is making history more accessible, because a lot of people I talk to hate history. They hate learning. It's like their least favorite subject in school, which I don't blame them, because the way that it's taught is really, it's just, it's boring a lot of the times. You know, it's boring. It's very like linear in terms of like, you know, they did this, and then they did this, and then this happened, and then it's very, that's boring. Who wants to, I always say history is a story, and that's how it should be told, like a story, because that's what it is essentially, you know, just like there are all different sides to a story, there are different sides to history. People think it's just very factual, that everything is just factual, and like, yeah, there are things that are, but then there are other things that it's depends on who you talk to, and it depends on who wrote it, who won. They always say history is dictated by the winners. And so I think that's is an area that I am interested in, because I think accessibility with history is really important. But again, it's not going to be like the basis of everything, because I think I would get total burnout if all I had, like, if I was just going to sit here and talk just about history all the time. Because like I said, it doesn't interest me to the point of that's all I'm going to do. Yeah, exactly. It I One of my favorite history teachers in school was he got everybody interested, all his students interested, because he was so interactive and he was so engaging, because he told us the different stories that surrounded the main story being told. Like, he was where I learned about all the wives of Henry VIII. He, like, because really, in a lot of ways, like, learning all of that isn't super important to the whole narrative of Henry VIII. You need to know all his wives, only the important ones, or just the idea that he had wives, but he wanted a son. So, and the church wouldn't let him divorce his one wife, so he became Protestant. Like, there's but when you learn all of it, and I remember him writing each of their names on the board and going through each one and what happened, and that was when I became really interested in the Tudors, and specifically Anne Boleyn. Like, I'm a huge Anne Boleyn fan. Like, I love her story. And he also, I remember when he was teaching us about the Revolutionary War, and he used like a rolled up map to look like the redcoats, bayonets and guns. And he showed, like, he just made it fun. And I think, yeah, not enough teachers do that. You kind of have to get to college to get the more engaging stories. Like, when I was in college, my favorite class I took was a World War II class. And the way he taught it, it was so, because even he said that he hated the way history was taught in grade school, because I remember him saying he hated those little like timeline posters that every history class had, that just was like, on this day, on this year this happened, and this year this happened. He's like, that's not how history works. History's not linear like that. He would be so mad. And so the way he talked about history, it felt like a story. Like, you felt like you were watching a TV series, because it was like he would start with one country. We'd focus on Germany and what Germany was doing, and then he's like, okay, let's go to England. This is what England is doing now. This was what China was doing, and then this was America, and then this was Japan, and we'd kind of go back and forth, and he'd always end on like a cliffhanger. So it felt like you were in a story. You were like, I need to know what happens next, even though you kind of know what happens next, but you're like, I need to know. And he gave, like, again, it wasn't this just very linear of like, well, Germany invaded Poland, and then, then everything turned to shit, and it wasn't like that. He like really got into like what was going on in these countries, and what was going on in the minds of the leaders of these countries, and what their end goal was, what their motivation was, how this was affecting the people. And it was just like, oh, you got the whole big picture, and it was a story. And it was so engaging, and I'm like, see, this is how history needs to be taught. And there's also the idea too of, as I was saying before, that history has different sides to it. It's not just this one way to look at it. And I learned that a lot in college when I took a lot of like Asian history classes. Specifically, I took the big one that opened my eyes was I took a lot of classes about Korea and specifically Korean history. And it was taught by a Korean professor. So we looked at things that I previously, as an American student, learning about like the Korean War, and I learned about the Korean War through the American perspective, which is kind of like fucked up when you think about it, in the sense that it's called the Korean War, and it was, it was Koreans fighting against each other, not, and America just was involved as we do. We just get involved in shit and just. Anyway, that's a different discussion. But learning about it, you learned about it from this whole other perspective. Not the American perspective. You're learning about it from a different perspective. And that's the same thing when I learned about like Japanese history too, learning about how when the Americans came over, from the American point of view, everything is always, because it's propaganda, everything is always, oh, we came in and we made everything better. We're the heroes. We saved the world, from all the evils and the injustices, and we brought freedom and, the propaganda bullshit. But then when you actually are taking these classes from the other side, from, the actual people of color who dealt who had to deal with the ramifications of what America did, you're like, oh, wait a second. There's a whole other different side to this that I didn't know about, So, yeah, that's that's my rant about also the way history is taught in America, so that, it opens your eyes when you learn it from other sides as opposed to just the one side. But yeah, that was my rant. Yeah, history is, because even for me as someone who can read history books, some of them are just boring. I remember reading I was studying Japanese history, and I was like, "Oh, I should be engaged in this because this is a topic that I'm interested in, it was so boring." I was like, why? Like, why is it written this way? It's just, it's, yeah, it's boring. Some stuff is just really boring and it's not engaging, and so it makes it harder, because it's already hard considering how it is, but yeah. That's why I just kind of feel like there needs to be other ways of educating people on history, and specifically within our community, talking about the past, and that it doesn't always have to be about what the ancient Greeks did. That doesn't have to be the end all be all of what we research and where we get our information, and also how we relate to the gods. It doesn't need to be grounded always completely in ancient Greece and what they did. Yeah, a lot of people hated history um when they were in school. I hear that all the time, where people are like, it was their least favorite subject in school, and which is funny because it's always been my favorite. I can remember clearly being in elementary school, and I'm like sitting there just like, ugh. And then my the teacher says, okay, take out your social studies textbook, and I remember being like, yes, the little nerd that I am was just like, yes, finally. Like, that was the highlight of my day, was social studies and history. I just always loved learning about it. but I can understand why it's boring for a lot of other people, because it's just the way that it's taught is very, I think I was also just really good at it because I had a good memory. And I know in school, in grade school specifically, you didn't really write a lot of essays. It was mostly multiple choice. So it was easy for me because I do really well with multiple choice. Because a lot of it is just memorizing information. And so I think that is the other thing too, is I think it's probably, because the way school's structured, unfortunately, it only gears towards certain learners, and certain studiers kind of. And so I just so happened that, especially with history, it was easy for me because I had a really good memory. Not only did I like it, so then I remembered more, but even regardless, I just was really good at retaining information, especially long enough to just regurgitate it onto a test. So, and I'm just a good test taker. So I think that's the other reason I excelled with social studies and history, is just because it vibed well with just my learning style and my abilities. Yeah, see, yeah, exactly. What Cord says, even he was good at memorizing, but he still hated history. He still hated it. Well, that's kind of like, I'm good at algebra. I hate math. I hate math with a passion. I just can't. But I know a lot of it is probably like the way I learned it, because I know that's how a lot of people say it's, that anyone can do math. Is you just have to learn, you have to find the way that you can learn math. Yeah, the method that works for you. There, that's a better way to say it. um but I was always good at algebra, but I still hate math. Math is yuck. That's so funny. I was not expecting us to get on a topic of history today. I was not expecting that, but here we are talking about history. But yeah, so I think this all came about because I was talking about the podcast. This was happens with me. I'll just go on tangents. Yeah, I was like mostly, I always was really good in school, but the problem became, because I was good at school, then expectations to always be good in school came. Sure, some of you can relate to that, especially once you get to college. You're kind of expected to do really well, and college is a whole other beast. Yeah. That's why I have a lot of shadow around academia. A lot of shadows. Okay. So maybe we should get back to talking about Hellenic polytheism. Well, I mean, we kind of are. History and all that's related to it. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure this all came about because I was talking about the podcast and how I am bringing it back. I just don't know exactly when, and I'm not going to have a date until I know for sure that's when that date is, because that's the other thing that I do, is I feel like I keep making promises that it's like, oh, I'm going to do it this day, but then it doesn't happen because I wasn't ready, and I just get really excited and just wanted to make a date. So, but it's definitely going to come back because I have so many thoughts, so many things that I want to talk about, especially now that I've kind of opened up what I want to talk about instead of it just being these. I do still want to do like deep dives into gods. Um that's a really important function of my channel that I want to keep, because those are the videos I get the the episodes that I get a lot of feedback on, where people say that it helped them look at certain gods in a different way, like especially Aries. That episode gets so many people tell me, "Oh, I have a relationship now with Aries. Like I was able to connect with Aries because you showed me a different side to him." And that means so much to me. And that's like, that's what I like, why I do what I do is for that kind of feedback of because I learned that he's not this evil, rageful jerk face that's gonna fight kids. Rick Riordan, what are you doing? Aries would never. Unless that kid, no, I don't. If the kid deserved it, would he? I don't know. No, maybe not. But he's not just gonna. He's just not gonna punch a kid. Okay, he's gonna adopt kids. He's gonna take care of them so that they're not jerks anymore. That's what Aries is gonna do. Um, but yeah, so it's like that stuff means the most to me. So I do still want to do like deep dives into the gods, especially because I did promise Apollo an episode forever ago. So I have to deliver on that. Yeah, and that's like why Iliad's latest rumor, Aries punches babies. People probably think that he does. Oh, that makes me so happy. Devotional activities. That's someone called me the queen of devotional activities one day, and it was like the best thing ever. I was like, yes, that's what I want to be known for. Because devotional activities are the shit. They are the shit. Yeah, that's really the ones who really need it. Like, yeah, the more unknown ones or the misunderstood ones. Though I feel like the funny thing is I feel like a lot of the gods are misunderstood in some way. Even Apollo, who is extremely popular and very loved, but I still feel like he's even misunderstood because I feel like there's a lot of aspects of him that aren't known or just don't get acknowledged. So I was thinking about this recently because we were having a conversation on Tumblr about media and the gods, and specifically how Apollo doesn't appear in a lot of media about the gods, and or if he does, he's a very like it's not, at least in my opinion, not the best representation, or it's just like the same one. He's kind of always that like vain pretty boy that likes to flirt and he plays music, and like it's very focused on the fact that he's got a lot of mythology around his lovers and that he is the god of music and he's pretty. Like that's what I feel like is most Apollo representation, not all of it. I liked Blood of Zeus because I felt like it was a little bit closer to at least how I experience Apollo. But yeah, like I feel like we don't talk enough about how he's the god of civilization, order, knowledge, even medicine, even though everyone knows that, but it's like that doesn't really get brought up a lot in terms of his personality, or like people will pray to him for healing, but nobody treats him like a doctor. You know what I mean? No one treats him like a professor or a scientist. Everyone treats him like a musician and a flirt and pretty, but he's not a scholar. You know what I'm saying? Like at least the representations that I about Apollo. It was never like those aspects of him don't really show up in how he gets perceived. That is true. Yeah, we should pay more attention to the muses. That is very true. Hi, Mary. Yeah, dumbed down disaster. I love that. Oh yeah, Titans. Nathan on Tumblr had a whole thing with talking about Titans. Like people were saying that they weren't gods. It was like a whole thing. I was just like, what? Titans are gods. Yeah, a lot of like, oh, Nathan's doing good. He's good. I actually got to Skype with him Friday, and yeah, he's well. He's just a little he's swollen and everything. So he's got a lot going on between his health and school and all that. So, but he's okay. I think he'd be very happy to know that you he's in your prayers. So thank you. But he's still his usual ridiculous, wonderful self. What did we were talking about something we were talking a lot about Athena and Artemis. And oh, we were talking about Athena in terms of how much she loves war, and a lot of people don't talk about other gods who aspects kind of don't get brought up a lot. Athena's another one. Um how much Athena loves war, and people don't talk about it enough. And I realized, I was like, you know what? You know who won the Trojan War? Athena did. Because Athena was going to win no matter what, especially with the apple. It's because I always questioned like why Athena wanted that apple. I was like, I can understand Hera and I could definitely understand Aphrodite, like it says to the fairest. And I didn't understand Athena's role in any of that. And I know Nathan always said, and this was a really good point, that Nathan's whole thing was that whoever got the apple essentially would rule over beauty because it's to the fairest. So Athena would want that because it's good, because she knows that beauty is a weapon. You can um weaponize it against people and manipulate people with it, kind of thing. And I was thinking it which is kind of, I feel like it's more funnier than it is. Nathan's is a little bit more accurate. I feel like it mine's just funnier, but my whole thing was I think Athena got involved because she knew either way war was going to break out and she wanted a reason to fight a war. Because either she was going to get the apple and so she won and she got the apple, but then Hera and Aphrodite would probably incite a war. So then not only does she get the apple, she gets to fight a war. And if she doesn't get the apple, well, she gets to fight a war because Hera's going to actually, she's like, oh, Hera totally want to fight Aphrodite if Aphrodite gets the apple. And if Hera gets the apple, then we'll fight a war over that. Like, I think either way, she was just like, a war is going to happen, and I'm fighting this war, and I'm excited about it. So I was like, I think Athena won the Trojan War. Right? It is. And it was the whole thing too. Like he said that, like with Aphrodite at the time, it was, she needed more realms to rule over. And like she wouldn't be as the goddess of beauty, she needed that apple because that was supposed to be like, if the goddess of beauty didn't get the golden apple, then what does that say about her? Right? So it kind of made a lot of sense when you look at it that way. But I think Athena is involved. Oh, I don't know. I don't like to necessarily I don't like to insert the gods in things that don't affect me. It's just not Yeah, that's why I don't talk about whether, like, I don't insert whether, like, a lot of people always ask about, like, Apollo with COVID and whether he did that. A lot of people think, they have their thoughts about it. I personally don't like inserting the gods in anything that it doesn't impact me, or just hasn't really, because I mean COVID has impact me, but not the same way as it impact other people. Like, I've never lost anybody, and the war going on has, like, it's not definitely not affecting me like it's affecting Ukraine right now. So for me, it's very, like, I just don't like to, it makes me uncomfortable to have, like, those kinds of conversations again when it's like has nothing to do with me. I mean, you could definitely, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with praying to the gods to help in the situation. I don't think there's any, I just don't like, yeah, I just don't like inserting the gods in certain things like that, because then it gets ugly. Athena, Athena, yeah, she's me and Nathan were actually having a whole conversation about Athena and how scary she is. She is scary. She is a lot, but she's not scary. She's not like, like, I never know how to say it. Like, her energy is intense. Like, she's Athena, she's a god of war. Like, she's a god of war. So, but she's also the god of wisdom. She's god of strategy. She's helped me out a lot with my anxiety, weirdly enough. She's given me the motto I always say when I find myself getting, like, really anxious. I say, find the solution, because that's what she used to tell me all the time. She would say, find the solution, because that was the idea of looking at anxiety through the lens of logic, because getting all worried and anxious isn't going to solve the problem. So you have to solve the problem. And either you have to figure out if can you solve the problem at all? Can you solve it now? If not, then why have anxiety? Like, why worry about it? Or if you can solve the problem, then solve the problem. It was very, having that logic and rationale energy around me just kind of helped focus in when I felt very all over the place and chaotic. Oh, calculating is a great word for Athena, because she's very cunning and calculating and strategic. And that's my whole thing with Athena. Like, I feel like, not to say, like, I never, I feel like I have to pick and choose my words, because when you use certain words, it kind of makes the gods seem like they're bad when they're not bad. It's just they rule over certain realms. They have very specific energies, and they have very specific personalities in the way that they go about doing stuff. So it's like, not all the gods are super warm and love and light kind. Love and light. They're, like, they have their own ways of going about doing things. And Athena, for me at least, it's my experience with Athena, she's very matter of factly and very direct and very, like, this is because she likes to win. Athena likes to win. She likes to get what she wants. And so she does what she needs to do. Does moral and ethics come into play with that? Well, I think that's more of an Apollo thing, in my personal opinion. Well, I think Athena, like, I think a good example is Apollo is the god of truth. So Apollo doesn't lie, in my experience. Apollo can't lie. Again, this is all my experience. Athena, on the other hand, as the god of strategy, has no problem with lying. She will lie. She will lie right to your face if that means getting what she wants or winning whatever. Will Athena cheat? Probably. Like, again, if that means she's going to get what she wants, that's how I see Athena. Because in the Odyssey, like, she calls herself, she says she's cunning, which is on par with Hermes, and Hermes is a thief. You know what I mean? So it's like, and Odysseus too. Like Odysseus, like everybody is like about Odysseus because they know he he's gonna do some shit. He's gonna say like certain things. He's gonna manipulate people to get what he wants. And so people are very like about Odysseus, you know, and Athena loves Odysseus. So, you know, so to me, I think because Athena has this rule, she rules also over justice and everything, that people just automatically think she's always very by the book. And I don't see Athena as always being by the book. Maybe in that specific aspect of her, she is, but then she also has these other aspects that are not that. It's more of I'm gonna do whatever is going to get me the result that I want. That is very true. People project their own shadow to realms that gods rule over and to the gods as an extension in my experience. Yeah, that is 100% true. That's what happened all the time with Aries. I think I touched upon that um in my Aries episode. Is I talked about how Aries, because of war, because of how we as humanity now look at war, we look at Aries that way. You know, like we, especially with all the world wars we have and the kind of destruction and horrors that have happened because of war, that we look at Aries through that lens. And unlike Athena, because the problem actually is Athena got detached from her war aspect. Because me and Nathan were actually having this conversation where it's almost like people kind of look at her more like how Minerva is. Because Minerva lost, that's the Roman goddess who's like seen as like the Roman equivalent to Athena. Minerva does not have the war aspect anymore. Rome gave it all completely to Mars. Like Mars is the god of war. So I think what ended up happening was Athena lost a lot of the war aspect, or was kind of like was seen more in a positive light, because it's like, oh well, she would be the hero, you know, like she would be the one that's fighting for good, you know, fighting for justice, kind of. She'd be the one in the right. And Aries, it doesn't matter. Like Aries just wants bloodshed, you know. And also Athena has these other roles that were actually more like kind of overshadowed war, which was wisdom, which was the big one. So she became kind of the figurehead of academia and learning and universities and all higher education kind of thing, which technically that's more of Apollo, at least, you know, from my experience. He's the god of knowledge, and he's more of like the god of like universities and libraries and things like that, because for him it's like his realm within knowledge is about learning to better yourself, to be a better person, to be a better citizen, to be a better human, to also just to learn, you know, while Athena is more of it's a weapon. you strengthen your mind the same way you strengthen your sword or you strengthen your body. It's all a weapon. It's all about strategy. It's all about winning. That's how I see it as, at least. See, this is a good question because I saw something on Tumblr like a few weeks ago where they were talking about the idea of like the whether the gods are perfect or not. And it got me thinking about it because I was like, well, what does perfect even mean? What is the criteria to be perfect? And what is perfection to a god? Like what makes a perfect god? And it's like, and who gets to judge what is a perfect god? Like, how can a human judge a god like that? It just is sort of like kind of because it is a question that people ask a lot, and there's a lot of debates around the gods and whether they're all good or all bad or this or that, and it's sort of like my thoughts on it is just like, but what does any of these words mean? Because even when we're talking about just humanity, we're going to have very different thoughts around what is considered perfect and what is considered good and what's considered bad. Like there are some like universal thoughts on it where we can be like, okay, we can all agree that this is bad, this is good, but there are a lot of other things that we're going to debate on. So it's sort of like how, if we can't agree on any of that, how can we look at the gods through those lenses? Yes, exactly. It is a standard we made up. It is completely made up, the idea of perfect, because I was just like, what does that word even mean? And what does it mean to a god? Like, how do you look at divinity and decide whether it's perfect or not? Because we don't even know what divinity really is, right? Like, we have no idea. We're getting all Apollo here. This is like Apollo's like, this is my shit. Yes. um, but like, we don't even know anything about the divine. We don't know what the divine looks like. We don't know what how much divinity is there. We don't know how the divine operates. We're just guessing. Like when we have these discussions, we're all just spitballing. Like that's all we're doing is saying like, well, I think the gods are pure energy, or I think the gods do have physical forms, but they can change it. I think, or I really don't think the gods are how we portray them as. They are just thought forms, or they're all different aspects of a higher being, or they're spirits that live in everything. Like there are so many different ways to look at divinity. And so if we can't even decide what the divine is and how it looks, then how can we judge whether it's perfect or not? Those are just my thoughts. Yes, exactly. We don't know, and that's okay. I like that chords. That's exactly it. Oh, bye, Juliet. Because it's also like the thing too is that I think good and bad are not. I think those are too general of words to really to even apply to human beings, let alone the gods, because human beings are made up of good and bad. Like you cannot live a life without causing some harm. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. We have all caused harm and we will continue to cause harm, but the goal is to, as you keep moving through life, is to have that harm lessen and have the good be more, and be more significant than the harm. But at the end of the day, like, we all have done good and bad. And it's also different like a different judgment on that, because some of the things that we may think are like the worst thing we've ever done, other people may look at it and go, it's not really that bad. Or we may think something even that we did was great is like, well, yeah, that's like the bare minimum, like, so yeah, everything is kind of, it's a little, I think I look at the gods a lot the way I look at humanity in terms of like, I don't want to say that they're made up of both good and bad, because I feel like that's just, I don't think they necessarily do bad. But the thing is that if the gods are going to represent different things that humans, like, different realms that are significant to humans, that means they have to include the darker aspects of things. And I think that's something that gets overlooked, is we want that kind of Christian concept of all loving, which is funny because if you read the Bible, like, God, well, capital G, I call him, has done some questionable things. That's just like, okay, but I'm not, like, he's done some questionable things. So if you're going to judge my God, like, let's talk about yours. But I think the thing is that if we're going to look at divinity as representing certain aspects and realms and things that are significant to humans and that exist in our world, then we kind of have to get used to the fact that that includes the messy parts, because it all has messy parts and chaotic parts and darker parts, like Aphrodite represents love, but that means she also represents heartbreak. She also represents, you know, cheating, and she also represents just all those nasty, painful feelings that come with loss when you love something and then lose it, grief. Aries, even though he is even though he's wonderful, but he does also represent toxic masculinity. Like, that's in his wheelhouse. Because that's significant to his realms. Apollo is also the god of diseases because he's the one that also heals them. He's, sometimes you have to, in order to be, because this is a big thing in ancient Greece, that they are the cause and the cure for a lot of things. Like Dionysus is all the good things that come with, alcohol, but also the bad. And, taking certain drugs and everything, the good and the bad. And I think those are things that people have to learn to get a little bit more comfortable with, that it's not everything, because again, being a human isn't all just squeaky clean, it's messy as fuck. And there's that's kind of like how I read tarot. Kind of feels like it's getting off topic, but it's not, I promise. How I read tarot is I don't do reversals because to me every card there's a like good, I don't know, whatever, like a benefit, a message, that's a better one. There is a message and there's a warning. Every card, whether it's upright or reversed, I read that with both the message and the warning there because that's how I see the world. I think there's both. And that's how I see the gods, you know? Like, I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that. I just think I think it's kind of like you just have to look at these words that we're using and kind of really think more on what you're saying with those words. You know, like what is it when you say perfect? What does that mean? Like what exactly does that mean? When you say good, when you say bad, what do those words mean? You know? Exactly. We can't expect them to be humanity's gods if they don't represent the darker parts of humanity. It's true. Because the whole thing is, especially like my whole jam is deity work, you know, working with the gods. And specifically, when you're working with them, it's because you're working with them on the darker parts, your shadow, the things that you're struggling with. And you're working with them for a reason because they know those aspects. They represent those aspects, you know? So, in order for them to be able to help you, they have to embody that part in some way. They have to know about it, right? I like some of the things that I like is I kind of like the using mythology in a way to look at the gods as the same way as humans in terms of having their own growth and evolution. Whether they do or don't, I don't know, you know, because I think that depends again how you view divinity. If you think divinity just shows up the way that it is and it just stays that way forever, it doesn't need to change. And maybe that's a definition of perfect where there's no need for advancement or to evolve because is it just knows everything, or I don't know, it's just in this state of just, I don't want to, because I keep saying perfection because it's like that's irrelevant right now, but if maybe that's because I think that's a good question of like whether we believe the gods have changed over time. Do you think the gods learn and adapt and look at us and see things differently? Because I kind of like to like look at them that way, like Apollo. I like to believe that Apollo went through a whole journey. Like if you use mythology as a basis, mythology kind of shows that Apollo did do that. Like he was a lot more um reactive in his younger years, and he was punished for it. He was sent away. He had to go work as a herder and a cow herder, and so he was punished for the way that he behaved. And when he kind of came out of his punishment, I think when he came back, I think he went traveling, went to Hyperborea, and he came back, he was different. He kind of grew up and he became the Apollo that we know and love now, who's all about like order and structure and civilization and truth and honesty and morals and ethics kind of thing. And whether that's true or not, I kind of, for me, I like that journey because it's relatable. I know that Nathan talks a lot about specifically Aphrodite through the lens of Aphrodite and Adonis. And he says that Aphrodite became who she is because of what happened with Adonis, because that's when she learned grief. She didn't know grief before that. And so it was easier for her to kind of be a little bit more like not caring of others, specifically humans, because she couldn't relate. And then she lost Adonis. And then she learned heartbreak. She learned loss. She learned grief. So that when she saw humans, like that's part of being mortal, is we deal with that all the time, with losing our loved ones and then also having to grieve ourselves, knowing that eventually we'll be following them. And that's when she became who she is now, where she's extremely loving and caring and, looks out for humans and everything. So for me, I kind of, those stories help make them relatable. And I think it shows how they are able to relate to us, because I think sometimes it's hard to think, well, how can a god, an immortal god, and a mortal find common ground? And sometimes when you look at these stories, if you think of them that way, that's how is when you think that they've experienced similar things that we have. Oh my god, the problematic thing. Don't even get me started on Zeus. That is my divine father. I love him dearly. And I hate the Zeus slander so much because it's just, again, it kind of goes back to our previous conversation about research and how it can help fight this bullshit. Because then, well, Zeus, those stories are, as Nathan always calls them, it's propaganda, and there's also a function behind them that's not just to say, well, yeah, Zeus is a terrible person that takes advantage of women. Like, that's not what was being said in those stories, It's the same thing too with Artemis, as my ranting with Artemis, or even not even just Artemis, but also Athena, like the maiden goddesses, that there's all these arguments about their sexuality. And it's like them being maiden goddesses were not the Greeks being like, oh yes, let's say something about their sexuality or how they feel about men. It was like, that was not, especially because it's so funny that we could sit there and talk about how ancient Greece was misogynistic, but you think that they cared enough about female sexuality to like write it down or make goddesses like virgins or maidens to say something about female sexuality? No, like that's not what they were doing. There was a real function to it that had to do with the goddesses' roles. It's the same thing with Zeus in his mythology. It's about his role. He is the father. That's he's supposed to be out there, getting it on. I don't know if I want to say that, but like making babies because he's the father. And the whole thing too is, again, it's about legitimacy, because if you can trace, or at least get a story, like write a story to trace your lineage back to Zeus, be like, yeah, Zeus thought my mom was hot, or Zeus thought my great 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 grandma was hot. And that's like that. legitimizes you, your lands, your kingdom, whatever. It's like, it's not, mythology is not really there to say much about the gods. They're more there to kind of talk about the ancient Greeks and their practices. That's, and like, that's really what mythology does. So yeah, I can't stand that stuff either. Yeah, I just feel like the gods, I don't know, it makes me relate to them more, imagining them, evolving and changing over time. And I feel like they kind of had to when the world changed, you know? And especially, like, not only were the ancient Greeks gone, but then you had Christianity overrunning everything. It makes me, the weirdly, the deity that makes me think of all that is Bridget, because Bridget was able to stay relevant because she became a saint, you know? And that makes me think of that the gods have to have some kind of strategy and have some kind of ways to adapt to the world, because humans, we're always changing, we're always evolving. So I feel like they kind of have to keep up with that, and they kind of have to, even though like we've established earlier in this live stream that humans haven't changed that much, we still have, like, our values and how we see the world is very different. So I feel like they kind of do have to grow along with that. But I think that's one of the reasons they like humanity so much, is because we don't we stay the same in some ways, but not all the ways. Like, we keep them on their toes, kind of, like, it's new stuff. It's not the same thing over and over and over again. I think it's the same thing of how, like, I always talk about Aphrodite, where I keep learning new things about her. And I love that. I love that I'm always discovering new information and seeing new sides of her. And I feel like I'm going to be spending the rest of my life learning about her. And I kind of almost feel like they feel the same way about us, because I feel like we keep surprising them in a lot of ways, like what we can do, especially the fact that we aren't gods, we're mortal, we don't have these powers and everything, yet we continue to build new worlds, we do different things. Like, look at what we're like, look at this. The ancients could never no, they couldn't fathom what's happening right now. Here I am talking to my computer, but you're all seeing me wherever you are in the world. Humans made that. Hephaestus is like, this is amazing. Like, I bet you, like, Hephaestus thinks it's the coolest thing ever that we've made the internet. And we use it to share cat videos and talk about cats. Hermes thinks that's wonderful. Hermes is like, this is great. They have all this infinite knowledge and they're just like, cats. He's like, I love these people. So I feel like, yeah, I just think, like, everything, because everything in the universe, in the world, goes through change, like, change is what everything does. So I feel like the gods are part of that. Like, the way I view everything is I don't think the gods are like, I don't ever believe that the gods created everything. That's just my belief. I think the world, I believe in, like, the idea of evolution and all that happened. And I think the gods are like participants in this world just as we are, but they're on a higher plane of existence than we are. So they have, they're immortal and they have their own powers, lucky them. But things affect them just like they affect us, because even the ancient Greeks believed that, like oaths, if they make an oath, they're bound by the same rules we are. They're bound by fate. They can't, that's Zeus's whole thing is, he can't interfere with fate. So as all powerful he is, he's actually kind of powerless in the face of fate. Also, they can affect each other. Like, it's known that Aphrodite can affect her powers can affect other gods. Eros, that's why Eros terrifies me. He's a little kid with all this power that's just like, haha, I'm gonna cause all kinds of mischief. Yeah. He scares me. He's like if you gave a kid a bazooka or something. That's how I see Eros. I'm like, I can't. That chaotic energy, I can't do it. But they can affect each other. So to me, I feel like because the world is always in a state of motion and in a state of change, that means the gods are also. Those are my thoughts. Those are my Apollo thoughts. Oh, go ahead. Please ask me questions. That's a good. The thing though is it's like a lot. The thing about myths though, and the thing like whether okay. Let's back up. My brain is moving faster than my mouth can keep up. When we talk about the myths, it's there are different sides to whether the victims of the stories are actually victims. So like one of the big ones that a lot of people talk about is like the Cassandra myth. Because there are different versions. That's the other thing people have to remember. There are different versions. So in the Cassandra myth, because a lot of people always bring that one up when we talk about Apollo, and there is a version of the myth where she makes a deal with Apollo and says, yes, you give me the gift of prophecy and I will sleep with you. He gave her the gift of prophecy and then she backs out of the deal. So he kept his side, she didn't keep hers. In terms of the ancients, she messed up. That's her. She's not really in. Again, saying this ancient Greek version for them it would be she was the one and wrong in that. And a lot of the mythology, it's the person who was harmed was the one at fault because they overstepped like their status, kind of like what their place, and they were disrespectful to a god. So that's the whole thing with mythology, is like you have to remember who the audience was and where the story's coming from. That for us the gods are more at wrong because they shouldn't be, they shouldn't do that. But at the same, like, there are other ways. But to the ancient Greeks, no, it was like, what are you doing? Like, for them, they're like, you dumb bitch. Like, that's like whenever anyone was like, oh, I'm better than this god at this, or I'm more beautiful than Aphrodite, boasting like that. Like, any ancient Greek listening to that story is thinking, dumb bitch, that's they're like, well, that idiot's about to get it, because they all knew that's not what you do. That's not how you act, So that's my thoughts on that. Exactly, Charlotte. That's exactly what it is. I always see it as either dramatized for human entertainment and or it's a social commentary on society at the time. It's exactly what it is. It's exactly what mythology is. It's not really it's not our Bible. And I think that's the problem. People think it's our Bible. It's our sacred text, but it's not. Cuz it gets equated with that. Like I've noticed that recently when people talk about religions cuz actually I remember it in The House on Haunting Hill, that show on Netflix. It's a great show. They were listing, the mother was talking about how like they had educated their children in all belief systems basically, and she was listing all the different like sacred books, talked about the Quran, the Torah, obviously the Bible, and was to also talk about philosophy, but then also said Greek mythology. Specifically Greek mythology, not Greek religion, but Greek mythology. And that's the thing. Greek mythology gets equated with religion. And I think that's the confusion is people think that Greek mythology is a sacred text for both the ancient Greeks and for modern worshipers, which neither is true. Like it's not, it's a lot more complicated than that. They're not sitting there trying to tell anything, really say anything about who the gods are and what their motivations are. It's more about, exactly, it's more social commentary. It's more about the ancient Greeks. I always say mythology tells you more about the ancient Greeks than it does the gods. Oh my God. Nathan, I have been talking about you all stream. You showed up. I was talking all about you. I was talking about how I was telling everybody about how because we were talking about how the gods are relevant. Well, how we relate, not relevant. That's sorry, gods, you're always relevant. How we relate to the gods and the gods relate to us. And we were talking about, I was saying how you talk a lot about Aphrodite and how she learned about grief and heartbreak and loss through the whole losing Adonis dying, and how that's how she began to be much more kind and loving to mortals because she began to understand what they were going through. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yeah, it sucks. Everyone taking the myth so literally. That's like I think the bane of my whole existence. Oh, Jay, you're definitely not wrong in that. I think a lot of people, especially once they begin worshiping, I think a lot of it is very it's an influence of Christianity because that's usually how Christians teach. They view everything through the lens of God and like the things that you've done and whether you upset whether you upset God or you've let the devil in, you've let the demons in, kind of thing. So it's always like this blaming you for something and blaming the divine for your misfortune. And I know that also the way we look at Greek mythology also kind of influences that because you think, oh, the gods are punishing me for something. But the thing is as I said before about being a human, unfortunately, when you live a life, harm, like you cause harm and just bad things happen. Bad things happen and they happen without reason. It's not that you did anything wrong or any god or spirit is mad at you. It's just life. You know, it is really just life, unfortunately. And the gods can't protect us from everything because they can't. This is my belief. I believe they can't because I do think there are, we're walking certain paths and everything, and they can't always deviate us from it because then what life is that? We're not living then. We're just then little pawns that we're like little dolls then that they're just moving around, So it's more like the gods teach us how to either, make better decisions or just learn how to deal because some things aren't, again, it's not your fault. It's not like you made a bad choice. So in my case, sometimes, yeah, I made a bad choice, but I'm not going to sit here and say that every bad thing that happened is because of you or the choices you made. It's more, like I said, things just happen. And it's more of like the gods help you learn to deal with it. And cope with it and handle it and manage it. So, yeah, I think a lot of that also is kind of learning. You kind of have to think about how you view the gods. Because if you believe that the gods are going to punish you like that, when bad things happen, that's them punishing you, then you kind of have to look at your beliefs around the gods and think, well, is my experiences with them really prove that they're like that? And if I think that, also, like, where is that stemming from? Is that stemming from things that I've read? Is that stemming from my own fears? Or my own conditioning around divinity and about religion and all of that? It's kind of a good opportunity to just kind of analyze where all of that is coming from, because typically I've found that we kind of have these thoughts about the gods that we might not even realize until we actually like take a step back and go, wait a second, why do I think the gods are punishing me? And why do I think the gods would punish me in this way? Why do I think the gods would punish me at all? You know? Instead of like having a conversation with me or just simply telling me like I don't like this, or saying like I would like you to focus on this instead of this. You know what I mean? Like, for me at least, yeah, that the gods communicate with me. They don't do bad things to me or punish me. They literally are like, well, Apollo yells at me. Apollo yells at me, but it's out of love. It's like, ugh, I love you so much, but you're so dumb. How can someone so smart be an idiot? Like, that's, but yeah, so I think it's a good opportunity to kind of really reflect on the thoughts that you have around the gods. Even the gods can't hide from the wrath of Karens. Yeah. Honestly, I think everybody, all of us, unfortunately, have a lot of like deconstructing these Christian thoughts and beliefs because it just is ingrained in everything. And I actually never realized how much it is in everything until I became a Hellenic polytheist. And I really kind of had to really do all those reflections on like, well, why do I think this? And realizing it's influenced from Christianity and Catholicism. And I'm like, and why I say it that way is because I wasn't raised in a religious environment at all. Like my parents are not religious at all. Well, my mom's spiritual. She's a lot like me. Like she's into all that metaphysical stuff like me and everything, and she knows about me worship, and she's even tried to act with Apollo and everything. So but I didn't grow up in a religious environment at all. Like my dad is very I think my dad's like closer to atheism. So, but it didn't matter because it's in everything. And I did not realize how influenced I was by it until I had to really deconstruct those thoughts and beliefs. Yeah. Oh, we were just having a conversation about good versus evil, Nathan. We were having the whole discussion about uh whether the gods are perfect. And we were talking a lot about how do you define what's perfect? How do you define what's good? How do you define what's bad or evil? And so we were having that whole discussion. Yeah, it is very Christian. Yeah, Nathan is a great source on all of that kind of stuff. Um that's one of his favorite topics is to talk about the influence of Christianity and all of that. We have a whole running joke that whenever we have a conversation, it's always it always turns into Nathan being Timmy's dad from Fairly Odd Parents, when he goes Dinkelberg, but Nathan goes Christianity. That's his whole thing. Oh, I'm glad you had fun, Chords. Thanks for stopping by. Love you so much. I'm hoping to make these like a almost every week kind of thing. Oh man, we've been on for 2 hours. Ooh. Should probably head off soon, but unless Hi Sophia. I don't know if anybody has any questions though. I promised myself I wouldn't be on for too long, but this is like 2 hours just flew by so fast. How does that happen? Oh my god. It's crazy. I feel like this was just me ranting about a lot of things. Did I even talk? What did I talk about? My goodness. Bye, Chords. But yeah, I think the whole thing going back to the idea of the gods and like their control over our lives. I do think like they value free will, and I think they also know that at least like my relationship with Apollo, he's very like determined to just help me become the best version of myself that I can be because he wants me to be happy. He wants me to live a happy, fulfilling life. And I think that's his main goal, but I think he knows that it's kind of like when you think of a parent and a child. Like a parent wants so badly to protect their child from everything, but they can't. So what you do is you prepare your child as best you can for the world, to go out in the world. You do your best, and you are still there for them. Like a good parent, in my opinion, is still always there. It doesn't matter how old they are. If you can help them, you will. Like because sometimes everyone needs help. So that's kind of how I see my relationship with the gods. It's kind of very like that, where they're like just teaching me to be able to rely more and more on myself, where I don't always have to turn to them, or they don't have to intervene all the time, that I can just take care of myself in a lot of ways. So that's how I see it as. Oh yeah, that's true. Media, all way that Christianities and concepts of, well, that's actually a good point, because like when we look at the story of the Iliad, it's a great example, because the Iliad, there is no good or bad. It just is. There's no evil that's being fought. There's no clear, like, this is who you should root for, because this is the moral character, and this is the immoral character who needs to be defeated. That's not in the Iliad at all. And I think that makes it hard for modern a modern audience, because we have that Christian concept of good versus evil, where everything has a very strict, like, stories all have a very strict, like, this is who you need to root for, and this is who you need to root against. And it's always like, this is the hero and this is the villain. And the Iliad, yeah, the Iliad doesn't have that. So it's like people try to make a villain and a good guy, which is usually, people say Agamemnon is the villain and Achilles is the hero, or the gods are the villains. They're trying to find a bad, like, a bad person or a bad character, and then have an uplift another one, when it's like, other than, well, Patroclus. Patroclus has done no wrong. But it's like, and Hector too. I mean, God. Hector fought his stupid brother's war, died for it. But it's like, they're humans, essentially they're humans. They're humans fighting this war. And the gods are just playing their part in a lot of it too, so it's like, there is no good or bad, and a lot of people have a hard time with that, because it's, well, no, Agamemnon is the worst ever, and Achilles is great, and it's like, are we sure about that one? Did you read all the terrible things that Achilles did? Like, no, he's in love with Briseis. Okay, well, he literally murdered her entire family in front of her and then kidnapped her. Sure, that's so romantic. You know what I mean? So it's like, where it's like, right, you could see it right there. There's no other moon. what refused to acknowledge every other moon god and said Hecate is the only true one. My thoughts on that is, what? That's my feelings on that. What? That makes no sense. So Selene's not real? Sorry, Selene, you don't exist. There's a lot of moon gods, not even just in ancient Greece. There's moon gods across all different cultures and everything. And Hecate, I mean, I don't know. Hecate wasn't traditionally at least I don't think so. Is it because are we playing the whole like because she's associated with witchcraft, so now everything that's associated with witchcraft we're just giving to Hecate, regardless of cultural and historical accuracy and relevancy? Like, I can't. I can't. And this is why it's important to know history. Right, Moo? Are you making biscuits for everybody? She's making biscuits for you all. Hi. Okay, I think, oh wait, there's more. Okay, well then, oh, wait, are they doing the whole, like, maiden mother crone thing? The old crone thing? Yeah, okay, that person, just don't even engage with that person, block them, like, because they don't know, I don't know, they're not, if they're just ignoring when you bring up Selene, then they're just, yeah, that person is just, no. It's a no. It's a no from me, Moo. Moo. It's a no from Moo, too. Oh, is she? I didn't know that. Huge problem moment. But still, to not acknowledge anyone else is kind of... Because then, like, what about Diana? And even Artemis has, whether, like, she's now very much associated with the moon, and that counts. I'm sorry, it does. It counts because Artemis and Apollo, and I'm going to use Nathan's word because Nathan's here, so I'm going to use Nathan's word. I would have did whether he was here or not because I love the word, but they were god eaters. So Apollo and Artemis love to absorb other gods and take over their realms. Apollo and Artemis did it in antiquity, so they can do it today too. So Artemis is a moon goddess as far as I'm concerned, because that's what she does. That's how she became the goddess of childbirth. She wasn't she wasn't originally. So she's a moon goddess now. Honestly, like, people like that, I would just not even engage with them, because clearly this is somebody who doesn't want an actual discussion. They just want to spew whatever BS they want. The fact that you can bring up, well, what about Selene? And they ignore it completely, that this is somebody who is not, no matter what you say, no matter what sources you pull up, no matter what, I mean, you could literally, like, somehow get Selene to, like, show up like physically, like how I'm here, and say I am the moon, bitch. They still won't. They'll be like, no, fake news. Like, it's not real. it's just not even worth your energy, your time, your health, your peace, your sanity. It's not worth it at all. You just block them and you move on with your life. That is what I'm doing now, because I used to be like that, where I'm like, oh, I have to educate people, or I have to show people that, that what they're saying is wrong. But the fact that if somebody like is saying things like that, like they don't care. They don't, because it's like, you would have come across, if you were doing the research that you're supposed to be doing and doing the reading and actually cared enough, you would have come across other moon goddesses. So it's just not worth it. Yes, that I did know. I did know that there was the Triad of Artemis, Selene, and Hecate. That I did know. I know Artemis, like, very much has taken some aspects from Selene, and, well, obviously from Selene, but also Hecate. Um, because Artemis is a god eater. Oh my god. Cancerian sun right here. I can fix you. Water sign, and I'm also a Pisces rising, so I get that completely. I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, let me educate the world. I can do it. I can make you a better person. But you can't, because some people have to actually be receptive to it. You know, people have to be receptive. They're not receptive to it, then yes, and that's true. What Nathan said, that Aries taught me people will go out of their way to piss you off and waste your time because they crave attention and they don't care if it's negative or positive. That is so true, especially on the internet. Especially on the internet. People just like to say shit. Perfect example is and we're going back to it, the hexing of the moon situation. That was done just to cause a whole thing, and they got exactly what they wanted, because people played right into it. People were like, oh my god, like, the gods are so, I could feel them weakening, the gods are upset. And it's like, what? Like, and it caused this whole thing, and they got exactly what they wanted, instead of if everyone just ignored them and was just like, what the fuck, okay, and just moved on. So a lot of times people like that you have to ignore, because when you give power to what you give your energy to, and that's witchcraft. Because witchcraft is all about energy. It's all about where you're directing energy, where, like, what the energy you're pulling from, and then where you're directing it, and you're giving the power to what you're directing the energy to. And that's the point. That's how witchcraft works. So when you give something negative your energy, you are giving that thing power. You're giving that person, you're giving that concept, or you are giving it power. That's one of the reasons I stopped. Like, I don't talk so much about, like, I used to have a lot of talk about, like, TERFs on my blog. I don't do that anymore. Instead, I focus on uplifting the trans community, because I want my energy to go towards that and not towards TERFs. You know what I mean? So essentially that's how I kind of view things. And this is stuff that Apollo taught me. Apollo taught me that your energy is valuable. That's your power. Your energy is your power, and where you put it is important, and you need to be more mindful of where you're putting and directing that energy. Bye, Melanie. It was wonderful hanging out with you. I mean, trust me, it's hard. I don't do it. This is a recent development for me. I used to be very much the same way where I like needed to tell people when they were wrong. Like I felt that way. I was very like that. I hated the idea that people were just walking around saying shit that they knew nothing about and like there was no one there to be like you're full of shit and here's why. But the thing is that people like that don't care. Whether if people are like if people as long as people are commenting or talking to them, they're happy. They don't care what it is that you're saying to them. They're just happy that you're interacting with them. But they're not hearing anything that you're saying. Instead, they're just going to keep trying to get a rise out of you. They're just going to keep trying. Like I had someone do it in I did a post about Zeus, of course. This is what happens. A post about Zeus and somebody came in and was like talking about how, Zeus is awful and he's done awful things. And it was no matter what anyone said, and it was a lot of other people that were commenting to this person talking about, everything that we talked about before about, the cultural context, not taking myths literally, it's not our Bible, and was trying to educate this person. This person did not care. They didn't care because they just wanted to get a rise out of all of us. That's all that they wanted. They just wanted all of us to get upset. Because even I said, you clearly didn't read my post because my post had a whole bunch of other stuff in it. And they even said, no, I read it. It just sounds like you just want us to ignore things like that or you're making excuses, like, so clearly this is not someone who came in good faith to have an actual discussion and be educated. They just wanted to be an asshole. So then I blocked them because I was like, because everyone just kept taking the bait. And I was just like, okay, we're done with this, and so I blocked them because that's what you have to do. They just want to start shit. Hi, Belle. Yeah. It's literally people that's kind of like you have to just start getting comfortable with the fact that there's just going to be people out there just don't who are just not going to see things your way, who are not going to listen, who are not going to who are not going to actually have a discussion with you, who just want to be right, who whatever, who have an ego, who are spewing their shadow everywhere. You just have to be like, okay, whatever, and then just block and move on with your life. And this is all lessons that Apollo is teaching me because I have that problem. That's another reason why I've been gone for so long is because I had to learn how to deal with any negativity that I got. And learn how to deal with trolls and deal with the jerks and everything and not let it affect me so much because I'm a Cancerian, so I'm sensitive. I admit it. I'm saying it. I am sensitive. So, and I also have a lot of my own shit from my past that makes me more susceptible to shit like that. So it was like a big learning experience to not absorb any of other people's bullshit, It is like family dinners all over again. Yeah, exactly. Go let people be when they decide to be wrong. Oh yeah, I am not on TikTok. I am not allowed on TikTok. Apollo has made it very clear I am not allowed on TikTok. So, yeah, for many reasons, but one of them, yeah, is because of the toxicity on there, because he knows I would get very upset, and also the fact that it's just really addicting. Like just scrolling through videos, because I have that problem with Instagram, because Instagram has the reels. Gets so addicting. Well, you can work with whoever. I mean, for me, Apollo's energy, it just works for me, but I think a lot of these things, because even like Nathan said that Aries is the one that taught him certain concepts. I think a lot of the gods, like any one of the gods, can kind of teach you these concepts. Something I learned is a lot of things overlap with each other. So it's like sometimes almost any god can help you with certain things. You know what I mean? Like self-love, even though it's very much an Aphrodite thing, it overlaps into other realms, and it kind of depends on exactly what kind of energy you need and where you need self-love, you know what I mean? So even in this concept, like learning, because even this can be viewed as self-love, learning where to direct your energy, that's self-love. You're valuing yourself, you're valuing your time and your energy and your peace to be like, no, no, thank you. Block. you know, that's self-love. So yeah, you can work. I could see hermaphroditus, you could work with them with stuff like this. Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, Aries is great for self-love. Oh my god. I actually personally see Aries as a god of self-love, especially because he's linked with Aphrodite. So I kind of see them both as self-love gods. Having a clean, comfy home is absolutely self-love. Self-love falls in so many different places that I do think that like every god, there is an argument to be made where any god can help with self-love. Again, it just depends on like what energy you need and like where, like what aspect you want to work on. Like for me, I've been discovering Apollo's self-love aspect. He's been helping me a lot with that. Yeah. I love that. You just show up and we're already just like Aries. Aries is like, yes, this live stream will be about me now. Okay, bye Apollo. Get out. I love that. Have a great week, Sophia. Thanks for hanging out. Oh, I'm thinking I need to head off because I unfortunately can't do long live streams anymore. I'm actually here longer than I planned to be. I planned to only be like 2 hours max, and here we are at 2.5 hours. But the good thing is that if I do these in smaller length of time, I can do them more often. So I'm hoping I can do another one. I should be able to do another one next Sunday. So I'm kind of hoping to make them like a Sunday thing now. It won't be every Sunday because sometimes I'll need a break, and I do sometimes work Sundays. So, but for the most part, I think Sundays will be good. Aw, thank you. You guys are wonderful. I'm so happy you all were able to come hang out. We had some really good discussions. So, yeah, I think I'm going to head out. So, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do think it's going to be like a Sundays thing. So, cuz I really enjoyed doing this again and I missed it. Having some fun discussions with you guys. I love it. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the first day of spring. Aw. My God, that means so much to me. Oh my God, wait, really? Oh my God, someone linked me on a TikTok? Wow, oh my God. That's so nice. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys next Sunday. But have a wonderful week. Happy Ostara and blessed Equinox. And yeah, heart you all so much. Thanks, Nathan. All right, I'll talk to you all. Aw. Oh my God, that makes me so happy that people were directing everyone to me. Oh, man, it feels good. All right, thank you for joining in. You guys are the best. All right, I should go. I'm not good at saying goodbye because I'm like, no, I'm going to miss you guys. All right. Have a great week. Bye, everybody.